UFO Roundtable, the UFO thinker and pursuit of the paranormal podcasts.
So, I'd like to welcome everybody back to the monthly roundtable discussion with myself, Frank, host of the UFO Thinker podcast, Ash, founder
Hello.
of UFO Identified and co-host of the Pursuit of the Paranormal podcast. How are you doing, mate? You okay?
I'm good. I am excited.
Yep. And Greg, paranormal investigator extraordinaire and co-host of the Pursuit of the Paranormal podcast. How are you doing, mate?
Very good, thank you. Very good.
And last but definitely not least, my old pal Dave Smethurst, a bit of a regular contributor to my show and a very knowledgeable individual when it comes to the UFO topic. How are you doing, Dave?
I'm very well there, Frank. You only call me knowledgeable when you don't know yourself. That's my experience. Drop me in it.
So we're going to go through some recent events topics, which I'll introduce, and then we'll kind of open it up to you guys' thoughts. I've been away having a break for the last couple of weeks, so today's kind of my first proper pod recording back, actually. So this will be a great way to catch up on some of the recent events that I've missed when I've been away.
Awesome.
Having my little break. And I suppose we're going to have to address the Lou Elizondo IG complaint, because that literally has just become available over the last literally 2 hours, I think. And I've been at work, and I know you guys have been doing one thing and another, so we've not really had a chance to properly get stuck into that.
Reading it now, trying to get the gist of it.
Yeah, well, it's a bit of a lengthy read, isn't it? 64 pages, I believe it is. So it's not the easiest thing to just skim through. But basically, I mean, I know you've had a bit of a read, Dave. So I'll go to you in a minute. But my thoughts basically were just that it backs up everything that Lou Elizondo has been saying all along in terms of the timeline. Literally, it's the most detailed kind of timeline, bullet pointed with dates and everything that I've seen from Lou Elizondo, and it matches exactly everything that he said in interviews the whole time, in my opinion. Now, there might be a couple of very small things that are discrepancies when I read through it with a fine-tooth comb, but to me it seems like it's pretty much what he's been saying the whole time. And there were also some really interesting specific videos that were mentioned as well, including like a triangle video which came to their attention in 2011, things like that, which I wonder if we'll get any follow-up on and be able to actually find out a bit more about that. And there's another one that I mentioned about something that came within feet of a Navy jet, I believe it was. And apparently there's video of that as well. And this was all mentioned in the full version of this IG complaint. And the thing is, I don't think he'd be mentioning things like that unless he actually had, very good reason to be able to know that he can back it up with actual evidence, because this is a proper official complaint. It's not like he's talking on a podcast, this, is it? So what are your thoughts, Dave? I know you've read it a bit today.
Yeah, the main thing to read is the 12-page summary. It has a little bit of the form when you're reading it. His handwriting's terrible, by the way. It's nearly as bad as mine. It's really awful. I mean, I'm looking at my handwriting now. It's very bad. Anyway, it's on a par with that. Anyway, irrelevant that. First 12 pages, and the 12 pages report, and it goes through it, and the detail is absolutely damning. He goes, the first 7 pages, he's just going through the chronology of who did what to whom, goes setting up ORSAP, A-tip, what his role in that was, like you said, Frank, interspersed with who was on the crew, what the videos were they had, and loads of evidence. There's obviously loads of detailed military videos coming out from all over the place. And so that video you mentioned, the one where it come close to the jet, I wonder if it's that one that was on YouTube about a year ago or 8 months ago. You know, the one where everybody debunked it in the end, it come very close. It was like a circular shape. And it come very close to the, I can't remember the name of it, but it was quite prominent because you saw it was a big circular thing and it come really close to the plane. And I just wondered if it was that one because that fit the bill. But of course, I suppose there's loads of them. Just as I'm saying it to you now, thinking about it, there's loads of them. Then the next 7 pages is about how Susan Goff and others blocked him in the Pentagon, and it's ruthless on Susan Goff, really, and Gary Reid, and there's a lot of blanks as well, as so it's hard to imagine. If you read the Twitter, some of our American colleagues have figured out who's who, but I haven't anyway. But basically, it mentions for the freedom of information, for going after him, for generally putting herself in the all-powerful position, and just constantly, despite evidence, going after him. So it's really damning. The upshot of it for me is it's so detailed that it's out in the public domain. But I think that the Senate committee have got all they need to call him as a witness, and I think. Do you know who's let it go out? Because I saw Greenstreet's name mentioned, and Greenwald maybe let it out, but it really, even though they're doing little moans about some other people about little fiddling details, it's really misses the point. It really benefits Lou. I don't think he's done it, but it massively benefits Lou in terms of what he's saying, his credibility, and the case for disclosure. Given that we think they're trying to walk it back a bit post hearing some of these people with some of these weird stories, it really gives a big impetus for the hearing. So I thought it was massive drop, massively significant.
Yeah, in terms of how it came out, I've not really had a chance to look at this really thoroughly, but I believe it was Stephen Greenstreet himself who was actually put this out, and he tweeted saying that the documentary that he did about Lou Elizondo and supposedly exposing the real story and all the rest of it. That documentary, he actually updated the comments on his YouTube video, or whatever channel it's on. I think it's on the New York Post, actually. But he updated the comments on that video with links to all the documents that are referenced in it, which is a bit weird. I don't know why he would. It's good, I guess, that he's being open about exactly where he's getting his information from and things like that. But it seems to pretty much contradict a lot of the points that he was actually making. Like, it strongly suggests, reading this IG complaint, that it was much more of a formal effort. It wasn't just a couple of guys or just Lou on his own having a hobby. It sort of, to me, dismantles a lot of Greenstreet's kind of key arguments. So it's unusual, really, that he's stuck to those arguments, knowing that he's had this document all along. Surely it sort of contradicts his arguments. But I don't know. As I say, I'll have to look into that a bit further. Is there anything anyone else wants to add?
You can definitely see the anger from Lou in the complaint. So, I've literally just spent 5 minutes just skimming it, or just literally knew about this document. But you just see in the language that he's using, you can see the frustration and sort of anger he has towards the way that it's been treated. When he talks about, the IG has to investigate the abuse of power, lying to the public, destruction of evidence, conspiracy. He's really, really serious things that he's saying. This has to be done, and so he's not going to have done this willy nilly. He's done this obviously with purpose and with enough to back himself up to say this has all been going on. So it's super, super interesting. I can't wait to read the rest of it and actually get deep into it when I get a chance to.
Yeah, it's interesting how he's really kind of held Susan Goff's feet to the fire on this as well. She's inserted herself into the FOIA process and questioning the legality of that and in the complaint there as well. So yeah, really interesting stuff. But I'm going to have a proper read through it, think on it for a couple of days, and probably do a dedicated episode just all about that, because I think it's a pretty huge thing, really. But obviously, it wouldn't be right to do a recent events and not talk about that, would it? Because it's just happened. So.
Very recent.
Yeah, exactly. Hot off the press.
I reckon, Frank, when you go through it, things we've talked about, even when you go through it, the chronology we often talk about and what did and didn't happen, it all becomes, it's quite good for that. And it'll really clarify a lot of things, and that'll be great. And Greenstreet, he's probably saying, haha, I got you. There's a comma out of place, and without missing his entire case has collapsed. But I think he's in a very strange place, I think, in terms of his deductive processes these days. So there you go.
Yeah. I was thinking the same. One thing about Lou's version of events, of how everything came about over the years, he's really talked about that on podcasts. And unless you've really gone through and combed through his interviews. I mean, the one I kind of go back to is the one he did with John Greenwald of the Black Vault, because he literally went through the entire process. Two people came to his office the year that it happened. There were certain people he wasn't naming, like Lukatsky and things like that, because at the time he wasn't public, but he laid out the whole timeline in that interview, and John Greenwald asked him very specific questions and he answered them all. And the point is, anyways, that a lot of people might not have had the time to comb through those podcasts and hear that kind of thing from Lou. But now it's right there in a publicly available document written by Lou Elizondo, bullet pointed, organised in chronological order. I think it'll actually be really quite helpful for the wider public to actually understand the timeline, you know, as Lou has said it from the horse's mouth kind of thing. So, yeah, pretty big bombshell, that. I'm sort of a bit reeling from it, to be honest. It's like blindsiding me a bit, that one. But yeah, it's good. It's what we like to see. Awesome. So, yeah, the actual first point that we sort of had planned before that bombshell took place was the recent NASA announcement. So, according to an announcement on the NASA website, NASA is commissioning a study team to start early in the fall, in the autumn, if you're here in the UK, to examine UAP, that is, observations of events in the sky that cannot be identified as aircraft or known natural phenomena, from a scientific perspective. And the study will focus on identifying available data, how best to collect future data, and how NASA can use that data to move the scientific understanding of UAPs forward. And it was also accompanied by an audio conference type thing, a little bit weird in my opinion. It was kind of like an audio podcast on YouTube, but you know, it was still interesting to hear the questions being asked. And the team itself will be led by astrophysicist David Spergel, who is the president of the Simons Foundation in New York City, previously the chair of the astrophysics department at Princeton University, and Daniel Evans, who is the assistant deputy associate administrator for research at NASA's Science Mission Directorate, and they will serve as the NASA official responsible for orchestrating this study. And when they were asked about exactly what they're trying to achieve with this effort, Spergel said, quote, "Our first task is to simply gather the most robust set of data that we can, and we'll be identifying what data from civilians, government, non-profits, companies exists. What else should we be trying to collect, and how best to analyse it," unquote. And just quickly before I hand over to you guys, a few other notable things to mention about this is that the study is expected to take about 9 months, or exactly 9 months, I believe it is, and has been allocated funding, which goes up to a maximum of $100,000. And I think that's not what's going to be spent. I think it's more of a case of it could be in the tens of thousands, or it could go all the way up to 100,000. That's kind of the cap that they've put on spending for this particular project. So hand it over to you, Ash. What do you reckon, mate?
Obviously, I mean, NASA's getting involved. It's obviously a big thing. I know in the past, like 12 months or so, you've had Bill Nelson coming out and expressing his interest in it, and obviously it's come down from him, I think, the whole program. But I mean, NASA, they're the guys that are up there. Should do something that he's looking at the ETH, the extraterrestrial hypothesis. If something's coming from outside of our atmosphere, then they're the guys that are going to be able to have the data already, which is what they're going to be looking at. I believe he's obviously looking at historical data that they've already got and analysing that in whatever way. So, yeah, I mean, is NASA involved in looking for investigating UAP? That's big, it's exciting. Whether, I mean, they could do 9 months, find nothing, and think, nah, that's it, we tried. We're going to just give up the ghost. Leave it to you, which could happen. But I think just the calibre of the people involved, I think, again, that's just big. And it's just more scientists, more high-level scientists getting involved. It's a pattern we've seen emerging over the past few years. There's more and more academics coming out, getting involved. I think that would be the future, and it's paving the way where people can say, look, NASA did this, so we can do a program. Other, maybe universities or whatever, can then come forward and say, let's do a program on this, because NASA do it, the government are doing it, we're going to now put more funding into it. So nothing came out of NASA itself. It's another ledge for people to look on and say, this is a serious topic of study nowadays.
Yeah, good point. How about yourself, Greg? What do you reckon, mate?
So we actually have got a T-shirt that says "Never a straight answer."
Yeah, I thought that might come up.
So my thoughts are that if you look at some of the photographs that NASA have published, some of them appear to be doctored, even though they say they put out all the raw images. And something that I noticed in that statement is that said they consistent with NASA's principles of openness, transparency, and scientific integrity. This report will be shared publicly. All of NASA's data is available to the public, and we make it easily accessible for anyone to see or study. I'm not sure I believe that. So my thoughts are, so NASA, they're looking for extraterrestrial life, and that's their mission, is to find life on other planets and Mars and whatnot. But if they don't find anything, because UAPs are maybe something else and not extraterrestrial, is that them saying, well, we didn't find anything, there is no life out there? And they go, well, there we go, NASA said it. But in actual fact, all they're looking for is life off planet, when this phenomena could be from this planet, for example. But one other bit that struck me was they also put down that the limited number of observation of UAPs currently makes it difficult to draw scientific conclusions about the nature of such events. There's literally thousands of people seeing these things, so there isn't a limited number of observations. There might be a limited number of scientific observations, but then they reference civilians, government, non-profits, companies. So are they going to go for people like Bass, NIDS, as it was back then, because they were collecting data from Skinwalker Ranch, not Stardust Ranch, sorry. And they had a lot of information on studies they were doing to anomalous phenomena. So are they going to hit companies like that, which they might actually have a vested interest in anyway, monetary-wise? So I don't know. It sounds good, but
I think it's interesting because in the second paragraph it says there is no evidence UAPs are extraterrestrial in origin. So I was wondering, why have they put that line in there? Because obviously UAP is sort of trying to distance itself from the Earth, because UFOs are linked with alien due to the way the media's been. UAP is that step away from saying it's alien. But they're now saying there's no evidence that UAP is extraterrestrial. It does seem strange to me that they put that in there. It's like, who are they trying to please with that statement? I'm not sure, that line. Just don't know why they put that in there.
Yeah, it's an unusual choice of language, isn't it? It reminds me a bit of those FOIA responses you get from the MOD, where it's like, you might be interested to learn that we don't have an opinion on extraterrestrials, or whatever it is, the specific quote. But it's like they've kind of stressed how they're talking about, not coming at this with any predetermined conclusions as to what might be going on. But yeah, at the same time, in the actual statement itself, they say that there's no evidence that it's extraterrestrial. It does seem a little bit lopsided, perhaps, there. But how about you, Dave? I know you've probably got some thoughts to share on this one.
I have, Frank. Yeah. As Ash said, it was announced with a big fanfare. It's giving good profile. It's giving a good subject a good profile. It's putting it on the map. So we can't moan about that. I mean, that's probably the only thing we can't moan about, really, to be honest. Some scientists even attacked it as reputational damage, which Avi Loeb gives some stick to, which I'll talk about when we get into it. But it also, I think it happened because Bill Nelson was sort of pushing for it, this new broom in NASA who is trying to change things, I think. But really, it didn't start well on that mad teleconference. It was like something from the 80s or 90s with some operator. Oh, it was absolutely mental listening to it. I will connect you now, and it was just pathetic. But it just symbolised what a archaic organisation they are. It was like something out of the 60s, really. Anyway, so it started off. One of the scientists said, "Never underestimate the power of nature." I thought, "Oh my God," you know what I mean? And then there was another one who said, "Oh, we think it's unlikely it's extraterrestrials." I thought, what are they on about? Anyway, but it got interesting when Gaddy Schwartz, the I think NBC correspondent, he said he asked them a question and it come out. But actually, what are they doing? They're going to spend the first 9 months. They talked a good game, but they're going to spend the first 9 months just looking at how the best way is to look into it, right? So that means they're not, and this is specific because of fast follow-up, they're not going to look at any of their data. Oh, no. We won't be looking at that. No, we're just going to think about what we should be looking at. 9 months. 9 months to do that. I mean, it's absolutely pathetic, really. And he said, well, 100,000 quid, we couldn't do much more, 100,000 quid. He virtually said that won't even get us to work. I mean, so that's hardly any money anyway. And then in the second phase, they're going to go generally at public records. And at that point, they might just look at NASA's stuff as well as all the other public records and come to a conclusion. So it's quite clear to me that it sounds great, but they're actually not going to do anything. Because any person with half a brain, right, if you were doing it, you'd look at it and you think, right, we've got a load of stuff we haven't looked at here. We'll look through all our stuff that we've got. We'll get 10 or 20 people, go through it, check all the signals intelligence, all the pictures, all the rest of it. We'll do that. We'll check it. And then when we know what we've got, and to the extent we can make any sense of it, we'll then decide what else we need. Surely any sensible person would do that. And that's precisely what they're not doing. And I can only think that they want to kick the can back down the road. They don't really commit themselves. They've been forced into it because they were mentioned in the hearings. And now they're trying to look busy while doing nothing, to be honest with you. I've got a bit more, Frank, if you want to hear it, but the lads might want to, you all might want to tip in. Anyway, there's, NASA, you took my best line there, Greg, never a straight answer. I had that written down, but anyway.
Sorry.
But no, not at all, because, it does need to be said. But there's loads of evidence with NASA that they've evidence of astronaut sightings being hushed up, comments coming over on the radio that we all know have been shut off, loads of things being shut down from the space station that they've seen mysteriously being shut down, which must mean somebody's in the control room or somewhere to shut them down, but I'll come back to that. There's a refusal to even look at stuff. There's loads of anecdotal evidence of things being airdropped out. And then there's stuff about their involvement coming out in Freedom of Information docs here and there. So they clearly bang at it, as we would say. They've got some sort of connection, which I'll go into. They were set up, I think, in 1958 under Eisenhower. There was a big dust-up about who would control the missiles and the space stuff between the Air Force and the Army and the Navy. And so they give it NASA and called it a sort of civilian force. But we know from Ramirez, John Ramirez, the CIA guy, but actually the CIA does a lot of science as well. So it had a military connection, sorry, is the point I'm going too deep into. There was a military connection from the start, really. And I think... basically, the jet propulsion labs where all the Germans were working after the war, all the ones they imported over from the Nazi Germany, they were all working in that. And so there's a load of, I can't remember his name now, but they were all working there. So there's a big military connection. And I always think there's been two NASAs. There's been a smaller one that's secret with the military connections that do, maybe you're in on the UFO. Well, I definitely, in my view, but it's arguable, in on the UFO secrecy and the cover-up. Then there's a much bigger NASA who know nothing about any of that. They're all scientists, and they're all bred to hate anything UAP or anything weird at all, and that's their thinking. So they're very anti it. And I think this has been sort of handed over to NASA, and it's the scientist bit who know nothing about the cover-up or whatever who have got it. They don't really want to do it, but they've got to do it. And probably behind the scenes, the people with the secrecy stuff, or in charge of the secret wing, as it were, I can't think of a way to phrase it, they don't want anything to come out because they'll be exposed if anybody really looks through the records. And I think in the middle of that, Bill Nelson sort of naively, or maybe not naively, trying to push a change within that context, really. So that's why I think we've seen quite a lot of foot dragging. So it's amazed me that I've seen loads of people really gushing about it, saying it's great and fantastic, and it's because I think NASA's got this big iconic status, and the minute they do anything, we all go, "Oh yeah, NASA's involved, marvelous." But really, I think that all that'll happen, they're not going to produce anything. That report will not produce a carrot in 9 months. It'll just say this is the best way to look at UFOs. You know what I mean? And I think really it'll probably try and slow it down, and they're probably waiting for other things to happen. Do you know what I mean? They're probably waiting for other reports. They had Avi Loeb on. He wasn't quite as rude as I was, but he was scathing on the actual, on the fact that it's taken him ages. He said that he wrote to the guy when Bill Nelson said he wanted to get into it a year ago. You know, that thing in the cathedral, I think he was in New York somewhere anyway. And he said, I can help you with Galileo. And the guy said, great, send me a paper. He's never heard anything. And I think Galileo, look at what Galileo's done, a committed group of people. And what are they going to do? And I think by the time that Avi Loeb reckons it'll be 2 years before they do anything. So I think it'll probably be game over by the time they get their act involved. So as you can tell, gentlemen, I'm not very impressed at all.
Yeah, no, it's fair enough. It's a good point, Dave, and I think it's what we've talked about here now has been quite a good sort of cross section of what I've seen on like UFO Twitter. You know what I mean? Some people really excited, and then on the other hand, people that are much more scathing about it. And I think it's a bit of a mixed bag myself. I mean, I do think that, like you said, Dave, and pretty much everyone has said it, we've been talking just now, NASA's got a big name, hasn't it? You know what I mean? NASA's one of those like real sort of important organizations, and it's almost got like a cult following. So just the fact that NASA are actually committing to be more transparent and open about this kind of stuff, I think has got to be a good thing. So, and also I think, if you're thinking of it from the point of view of, UFO Twitter, people who are like deep in this topic, it might not be too much to write home about for people who are like fully into this topic and you look at it. But what I was thinking of is think about the knock-on effect that it has on mainstream news and things like that, and just the wider public. As soon as I saw a clip the other day of Richard Madeley, the old morning breakfast TV guy, and American listeners won't know who he is, but he's like a TV personality who does breakfast television. He's done it for like 25 million years. And he was talking the other day about UFOs with relative seriousness, and you got to think people like him, who's not like a big fan of the topic, he hears that NASA have got this group looking into UFOs, and all of a sudden it makes them take it a bit more seriously. So I think there's that's got to be a positive. But on the other hand, there are certain things, like everybody was saying just now, a good place to start might be their own hard drives. You know what I mean? Because this, like, they keep sort of asserting that like all of the NASA's findings are all public anyway and things like that. But we all know that there's definitely some stuff that they don't release. Now, some of that might be because of collaborations with the CIA and stuff. You don't want to like release your footage of secret spy satellites just zipping by the screen and stuff. So there's logically going to be certain things that they're going to have to withhold from the public. So it's not 100% true to say that everything is available to the public, is it?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
So the question is, I suppose, what extent is the other stuff that they do actually have on the hard drive? But you would think that would be a good place to start, wouldn't it? The archives of, probably, I don't even know, a vast amount of data that they've managed to collect over the years. So what are you guys saying? Any further thoughts on that from any of you?
Yeah, I think like you say, I think a lot of people have a romantic connection with NASA, with just like moon missions and everything. The people, especially people that grew up in the 80s and stuff, I think, and older, probably have that romantic connection. So you got a UAP interest, and now see NASA coming on the scene, I think a lot of people like myself, wow, that's great. But so you mentioned Richard Madeley, and I was going to mention that as well, because he was talking to Tim Peake on Good Morning Britain. Tim Peake, who you don't know, he's a British astronaut, and he's come kind of a celebrity in his own right in the UK. He's been been to the ISS and all that. So he's talking to him on the morning television. And I got a message from my mum, and my mum is sort of old school. She's like, "Oh, be careful when you talk about UFOs, when you're going in the papers and stuff. People are going to call you this and that." I was like, "I don't care what people call me." And she messaged me saying, "Oh, just been talking about UFOs on this morning on Good Morning Britain." So I started looking and watching it. And it was a good piece. It was a serious piece. Richard Madeley and the other female presenter, not sure what her name was, talk about it in a serious way. Tim Peake was saying that he thinks it's a good thing that being more, because they're talking about the US opening up the task force and the investigations over there. And and Tim Peake was saying, because they're talking about like TikTok videos and the crafts, that the videos that they've got, and Tim Peake was saying he doesn't think it's for an adversary. He thinks it could be an unmanned drone from another civilization or a future human. And this is a conversation between Richard Madley and Tim Peake on morning television.
Yeah,
talking about
pretty wild.
Yeah, it's and not in a joking way either. So it's, and definitely I got my mum texting me about it. So it definitely opens it up to the mainstream, which is long term is only a good thing for us that are deep into it.
Yeah,
definitely. I think you get someone like Tim Peake talking about it. That goes back to the whole NASA. People taking it more seriously if it's someone like that than if it was just Richard Madeley talking about it on TV. Yeah. People would think he was mental and a bit of a lunatic. But as soon as you put a branded name on there, it puts so much public credibility, I think, to the whole thing, that no matter what NASA come out with and say down the line, people will believe it because it's NASA. The people like ourselves that are discussing stuff probably not so confident that what we'll hear from them will be exactly the truth. But that whole NASA branding and Tim Peake, certainly in the UK, is massive. So
he seemed to know his stuff as well. It wasn't just like he just read up on it. He seemed to know about it as well, which is interesting enough that he's sort of got an interest himself in it, whether professionally or just personally. He does have an interest in it.
But talking Future Human is massively off the scale of UFO or UAP. That's like a whole nother level of... That's morning television on steroids, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, they didn't have any weird music either. That was good, and it was dead serious. I thought it was 10 out of 10, that, actually. I couldn't fault it. Yeah. But it's interesting you say about celebrity there, Greg, because I had a Twitter sort of back and forth with a guy called John Kugler, and I think whether that's his handle or his name, I don't know. But he was making that point, and he gave loads of really good examples of what you've just said about where they have. And it's a really strong point, which I hadn't really considered till I saw that. And as you say, it does make a big difference. Like you say, Ash, your mum ringing up and saying, it makes a difference, doesn't it? It's hard to, when you're in it like we are, it's hard to sort of get that, isn't it? But it does.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think at the end of the day, for us kind of enthusiasts in the topic, the proof's going to be in the pudding in terms of what actually gets done with this whole thing. And it's just, for me, it's mostly frustrating that it's going to be so long. And at the end of that 9 months, we're not really going to have anything to write home about other than they'll have made their minds up about what they're going to be looking into. So it's a bit of a long game, really, isn't it? But the main thing is, I think for me as a positive, rather than we're going to get some really juicy, information from NASA, it's more a case of it's positive that it'll have that knock-on effect onto the mainstream. And, it's like, imagine you're debating or talking to one of your mates in the pub and they're like, oh, you're into that weird UFO stuff, and you can throw the NASA card at them now and say, like, well, actually, as it goes, the US government are taking it pretty seriously, and so are NASA. And as soon as you drop the NASA bomb, certain people are going to sort of, wake up and take it a little bit more seriously. But in terms of what actually comes out of it, we'll just have to wait and see, won't we, as time goes along.
Yeah.
Definitely. So, moving on to another topic then, there's been a few videos come out now. These have actually really been over the last kind of 3 or 4 weeks, but as I said at the beginning, I've kind of been on my holidays and stuff, and some of these, I don't know if you guys will have seen, maybe you'll have seen some of them, but not all of them, but we'll just kind of talk about them, and if there's anything that you want to add, we can get some opinions on them. So, first of all, there was the actually quite a recent one, was the Queen's Jubilee celebrations. There was a flyby consisting of various waves of aircraft flying over in formation, and one of these waves was the Red Arrows, officially known as the Royal Air Force Aerobatic Team, which is the aerobatics display team for the Royal Air Force, and during their flyby in particular, there was kind of like a roughly spherical object, dare I say, a little bit balloon-esque, which seemed to travel. Yeah, which seemed to travel through the smoke plumes behind the aircraft as they flew by. So I'll be honest, I thought that was quite interesting compared to some of the other videos that have been coming out recently. But after kind of a bit of closer examination and checking out a few sort of reliable skeptics, like people who do video analysis and stuff, I think it does start to appear a bit more like a balloon once you have a look into it. And apparently there's a thing where if you look at the pixels just below the object, there's some like pixelation just below it, which may suggest a string. But I mean, I've not made my mind up 100% either way. But what do you guys reckon? I'll tell you what, we'll start with Dave this time because you had to go last earlier.
Well, it's a bleeding fast balloon, lads. I must tell you that. I mean, I know you're all scoffing there up your sleeves, but I actually thought, I'll tell you where the journey I've been on this, but you put me off now with your laughter. But I thought it was, as he's keeled over it. But anyway, I thought it was a balloon or a bag of a drone. I thought, oh God, what's this? And I just dismissed it. And a load of people said similar. I seen it on Twitter and a few people who. Then I actually saw the footage from two different angles. It's quite good. I can't remember the switch. He's pretty good on that sort of stuff. And you could definitely see a trajectory. It was going quick. It was on the sky thing. It wasn't doctored. It did an angle turn. And it was going quick. It was going as quick as the planes. It looked like it was, and I don't think it was too near. Then there was another one coming from below, and it looked like it was moving. So I thought it would seem to be pretty good, actually. But again, it seems to manoeuvre at high speed. And apparently there's a history of these things at air shows. There was something at Miami recently, and it goes back in time. There's loads of them. However, I must admit I've not been too close in it. So all joking aside, you guys might have seen a bit more that sort of debunks it. So I'm open. Don't bother me. Yeah, I just want to know if it was or it wasn't. So, but I went from, a load of rubbish to maybe something to it. But, so I don't know where the story goes from there.
Yeah, I think it was Chris Spitzer that I saw. I don't know if if all the listeners will be aware of Chris, but Chris Spitzer does some pretty in-depth analysis, and sometimes he's pretty kind of in it for the truth type of thing. Sometimes he'll debunk a debunker's explanation. Other times he debunks a video that everybody would love to, thinks that it is an actual UFO. And I think initially when he was doing his analysis, he was quite intrigued by that video because he said that it does appear to show some strange movement and all the rest of it. But then I think as he's gone along, I think he's ended up concluding that it may be a balloon because of that pixelation below the object. Right. But as I say, I'm no expert, and I suppose there may be more footage that comes out because you'd think there'd be quite a few different angles of that, wouldn't you? With it being a flyby, that everyone's going to have the phone up in the air. So I suppose if there is anything to it, we'll find out more as we go along. But what do you reckon, Greg?
So I saw it, and I'm with Dave there. I was quite intrigued by it. I'm not the UFO expert by any means. Paranormal's more my thing. But on first glance, I thought it was moving at high speed. I didn't even think it would be a balloon. Drone maybe, because I've been a commercial drone pilot, so I've seen drones move quick, but I don't know. So I tagged Ash in it on Facebook, one of the Facebook groups, and it was like balloon. And then that was kind of me going, okay, you're the expert on this. That's weird. But every time I see it, I can't see that it's a balloon. It just doesn't look like a balloon to me. And Ash is probably going to give me daggers now as he's. But it to me as a normal person, it looks quite interesting. I'll be honest, but like you just said, Frank, it's the Platinum Jubilee. It's the Red Arrows. There has to be probably thousands of people with this footage on their phones, and phones are pretty crap at distance regardless, but it looks like a sizable object because the Red Arrow planes, they're not massive by any amount, but it looks quite big to me. But I don't, it's not my area, but it's an interesting video to me. I've that's all I can really put my slant on it. Ash is just waiting to dive in there.
No, let's do it, Ash, because I've been quite interested to hear what you think about this. I have seen some skeptical rumblings on Twitter from you on it, and I thought, I mean, you've seen a lot more of these kind of videos than I have. You know, obviously you get stuff like this sent to you, don't you, through the website? So go on, what do you reckon then?
So my notes that I put for this round table under the Jubilee video, I just put balloon. That's the only notes I made for it. So going back to when it first sort of came out, like this has been on Sky News or whatever. This video, people like highlighted the thingy bit. I was initial instinct was balloon or bird, or usually when it's something like this, from the appearance that it has, it's balloon, bird, insect, close to the camera. Pick or choose which you want. I watched it probably a handful of times, and it's a balloon. And I mean, obviously, I'm always open to having my mind changed.
Doesn't sound like you're open to having your opinion changed.
So people put on this other angle from the cockpit. He recorded this angle of the same.
Yeah.
Well, it's not the same object. It's two different objects, probably two different balloons. Obviously, like I say, you got thousands of people there. They've all got red, blue, white balloons and party stuff, and it's a celebration at the end of the day. That's what it was. It's a balloon, and like it's just kind of, to me, it's a little bit because it went viral, like in the mainstream papers and everything, and it's like, why is it always a balloon that goes viral? Why is it not like one of the? Like, we have so many other good videos that could be used, and it's a balloon, and so totally like being transparent. I haven't done much more digging into it apart from that's a balloon. I've watched it 5 times. It's a balloon. Because I not wanted to. I mean, I don't want to say waste my time, but waste my time because it's a balloon. But I'm open to anyone saying this is why it's not a balloon. But
hey Ash, I think NASA's got an opening, you know.
Yeah, you're ticking a lot of boxes for them.
I'm very scientific in my approach.
I would say more seriously though. I mean, you are used to looking at all this stuff, so I would give some faith in your opinion. So we're all joking aside, and Chris Spitz is pretty good as well. So I mean, you know, it's good insight to have, because when I'm looking at it, I don't know what to make of him really. I must be honest. So I thought there was something to it, but I will take those opinions on board seriously anyway. So.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it does occur to me that even if it is something anomalous, it's definitely not a smoking gun, is it? Sort of thing. It's not like that's going to be the one that convinces the public. And I suppose you could say that for all of these that we're going to talk about. But it also, you know, there's a little bit in the back of my mind thinking like, if it is something anomalous, it's pretty brazen, isn't it? You know what I mean? The Queen's Jubilee, the flyby, and they've just zipped through the smoke trails, you know. If it is some kind of anomalous craft, that'd be quite something. But as I say, yeah, it's very unlikely that it is, I think, on balance, but still interesting to consider. So the next one is the Apache DHS. I've actually called this the Apache DHS birds video, so that kind of gives away what I think of this one. But in all seriousness, this was released in cooperation with the Debrief News website, and it came through a source at the Department of Homeland Security, who is in contact with Andy, who goes by NYUAP on Twitter. And he'd already brought forward various other videos through this same source, including the rubber duck video that came out recently and the A-10 Warthog video. And they're generally caught by Border Patrol personnel on FLIR camera attached to various aircraft. And in this case, it was an Apache helicopter pilot, hence the name Apache DHS. And at first glance, I must be honest, I just thought this looked like birds. I mean, you know, just a sort of layman's, I'm not an expert in video analysis or anything, but to me, just at a first glance, I just thought it looked like birds. And I've been following Dave Beatty and Chris Spitzer once again, their investigations, and I think they've basically pretty much concluded it was most likely birds. And there were some pretty wild proclamations about this one made by some of the people involved in bringing the story to the public eye, including that it was a much better case than Navy videos like the Nimitz Tic Tac incident FLIR video. And I don't really understand that, to be honest, because we're talking about something that's just, one individual's witnessed this, no accompanying radar footage or additional witnesses, and it seems pretty ambiguous to me. I mean, if it's not birds, it kind of, it looks a lot like it is, even if it's not. So, but having said that, I do think the most compelling thing about it is that there are some other experts who do think it shows something genuinely anomalous, like Chris Leto, who was involved in the article and the debrief when the video came out. He thinks that it's genuinely anomalous, and something couldn't move like that, and all the rest of it. So there is definitely kind of thoughts on both sides. So, what do you guys reckon? And I think we'll start with Greg, because you've not gone first yet.
So, incidentally, we put this video up on our TikTok page as well, and it got quite a lot of views. People, I'll pull it up as we're talking, but I quite liked it. Like the last one about the balloon, I quite liked this one, and I thought it was an interesting video. Again, you would like to think that it was some guy flying an Apache would know what a bird looks like. I don't know, or three birds. And it does seem to me, it seemed like these, whatever it is, birds or objects, they do spherically sort of like spin around at one point, and I've never seen a bird do that. I don't know if anybody else has.
We'll get Alan Titchmarsh on the show next week.
Yeah, definitely. I just think I liked it. Again, it was one of those videos I liked it. I thought it was intriguing. There just seems to me, and if we go back a step, and we're talking about all this stuff that seems to be happening in the mainstream press, or coming out of sources that are putting out a lot of footage, news stories, all seems to be happening a lot at the moment. So for the fact that we're discussing a previous video from Jubilee, whether or not that's a balloon, an Apache helicopter pilot's recording, all happening and coming out with Tim Peake talking about it all in the last month, it's pretty amazing anyway. But I like this video. Personally, again, I'm a layman. I don't have a particular expertise in UFOs at all, but it does look to me like at one point the objects seem to spin round each other, and I can't explain what that would be. It doesn't look like a bird to me. I can see why you would say it was birds, but it don't look like birds to me.
Yeah, I say when I first saw it, I was like, "Oh, this is interesting." And like, say, you got the pilots saying like, "Oh, to quote, three really fast flying jets up there." And everyone's saying, it's probably A-10s or F-16s. So you think, straight away, you're thinking it's some sort of craft or whatever. That's what they think it is. And then obviously, it's a cool video, like you say. And then when I dug deeper, I think it's Mick West as well. It's sort of straight away, I was like, yeah, it's birds. It's birds. And there's quite a lot of videos. And you can look at videos of just birds in formation, especially at night time or when the sun's going down. And the way they look on camera does look odd, and they don't look like birds at all. You can see, like, say, a formation of, say, 7 or 8 starlings or seagulls in formation. When they're just reflecting, like, the twilight sun, they don't look like birds, and you just see the weird lights travelling in formation and then sort of moving in and out of each other, which is what you see. I think, yeah, that's what it looks like. So it could be birds. Like say, it's hard to say. There's obviously any proof. You can't say either way that it is, but at first I was like, yeah, this is really cool. But then when you look into, like, with Mick West and the others saying, yeah, I think it could be birds after all.
How about yourself, Dave?
Well, Mick West, I mean, he says everything's birds, doesn't he? So he's bound to be right sometime, let's be honest. But I mean, yeah, I thought it was all right, first of all. So I thought, it's great. Guess where I'm going with this. I thought, yeah, it's great. It looks legit, like you said, fast. The pilots should know what they're doing. But then I think it was a freeze frame from, I think it was Chris Spritzer, and you could see the bird shape with the wings. You could see it on the pixel, the way it was done. And I thought, it's definitely birds. Then I looked again at the movement, and I could see what I didn't know with that level of detail. That's what you said. But I could see the movement, and I thought, yeah, it could well be birds, that. And it just goes to show, like a lot of these things, you've not got any other corroborating evidence. You've no chance, have you? Really? I mean, if it's at the wrong angle and they don't see it very often, a pilot might, what those guys might have seen it, but we've no way of knowing. They don't have any radar in those helicopters apparently like that anyway. Who could pick that up? I read that. I didn't know that. I just read it from the articles. So I thought, generally, it was. I thought it was. I definitely thought. Well, I didn't definitely, because you can't be definite, but I was pretty sure it was birds after I'd seen it, and it was just unfortunate. It was night time. So it was. It just. I thought they rushed in a bit quick. They did a big lead up the debrief, and they're normally pretty good on that, and they probably just got it slightly wrong there, because he's not got a very good batting average, this fella who produced this video, because he wanted to. His dream was to set up something in the border service like ATIP, and he brought out that sort of drone or whatever it was, rubber duck, that many people think is a drone with a drug payload in going over the border. There's another one was a bit dodgy, and he gets very prickly if he's challenged, apparently, as I can tell, or I can see from Twitter. So, so they maybe. I mean, I think they looked at it. It was a good story, and they liked the story, but they probably got a bit entranced by the story and didn't really step back. That's what I think, because there's a lot of people were saying, "Oh no, it's definitely, you can't say it's that," and again they were proved wrong. So I think it's a lesson to us all. That I think that one, but I don't. Again, I don't want to be a bloody. It definitely is, because I don't know, but I certainly changed my tune when I saw some specific pictures. So I think if I was to hold up my scoring card, I'd say no. No, but we've got on. We should do that, Frank. Yeah, you should give us a 9 out of 10 or scoring cards.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to get some of them made for next time, eh? but yeah, I tell you what it was for me was again, Dave Beatty's investigation. He actually got in touch with a bird specialist. The directions this topic takes you in, it's mad, isn't it? But apparently there's some types of birds exhibit that type of behaviour, where they fly in 3, 4 small groups, and one bird flies along and other birds kind of like fly around. I mean, again, I'm no expert in birds or anything like that, but Dave Beatty actually reached out to this particular expert. I forget his name. I tried to have a look just now, but I can't find it. And he said that there's basically only 2 types of like a breed of bird that actually do that. One of them wouldn't be in the country, but there is another one that it could possibly have been who would generally look like that if certain times of the year. So that for me was quite compelling that it may well be birds, but we don't know for sure. And as I say, there's people like Chris Leto, very very good analyst with things like this, and he seems to think that it is anomalous. So at the end of the day, I don't know for sure, but as I say, to me, it sort of just look a bit like birds. But anyway, we'll move on from that one. Shall we get to this next one? So, the Niagara Falls Triangle. So, UFO researcher Danny Silver wrote on his blog, I think it was a couple of weeks ago now, about a case of a triangle being sighted and filmed at Niagara Falls. And it apparently had been investigated by BASS. Obviously, we mentioned them earlier. It's Bigelow Aerospace Advanced Space Studies, the organisation set up by Robert Bigelow to fulfil the contract for the Advanced Aerospace Weapon System Application Programme. The precursor to ATIP, which obviously we've heard about all of these various acronyms a lot over the years. Now, I think the actual video that has been going around, or there's a few videos, are not actually confirmed to be definitely the one that BASS actually investigated, but it's just very likely to be based on what Danny Silver has been looking at and that kind of thing. It's known that BASS have got videos of an incident of a triangle there, and this looks like it very likely could be either the same actual video or possibly just a similar sort of object in the same area, a different video of that object, who knows. And yeah, interesting. Anything that involves a triangle, I'm always interested straight away. My ears prick up because I've got a bit of an obsession with triangles. Never seen one, but I would love to. And it's an interesting one. So what do you guys reckon? Will we start with you, Ash, maybe on this one?
Yeah, it's weird. I'd be interested if we ever did find out if this was the one, because I mean the video itself is not good quality. It takes a few watches to realize what you're actually looking at. It's hard to make sense of what you're looking at, and it's again with the video, there's not really any context to it either, so you can't really work out. Again, that's why it takes long to figure out what you're looking at, because like literally, it's like a lot of videos people put on Facebook just put a video and nothing else. Right, so you're spending 5 minutes trying to work out what am I actually supposed to be looking at before you even then start trying to think what it could be. So that was my first look at the videos, was what is this supposed to be? But then it's interesting because it definitely looks like there's something in the sky. And when you look at the videos of the same area in the daytime, there's nothing like that's high up that it could have been. It's not like there's any buildings or like maybe the time there could have been like cranes or something in the area possibly, but apart from that, it's quite open land. But the spotlights are like reflecting off whatever it is that's in the sky. So it's out of the 3 videos we've talked about, this is the most interesting, just because there is definitely something there. It's just because of the quality of the video, there's nothing else, in my opinion. I personally couldn't really do much else with it because you can't the quality of it.
What about you, Dave?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't sure. There's a bit of a, since Elizondo mentioned there's a video of a triangle out there, but it's actually a real one, and he couldn't say what it was. There's a bit of a hunt the triangle going on, isn't there, in the community? Everyone, is it that triangle? Is it that one? Is it that one? So every time the triangle comes out, and that was a bit of the subtext to this story, I thought, that was going on from Danny, or that's what was ascribed to it anyway after that. But I think, I don't know with this one, because I was listening to the Thomas Fessler show, and they were talking about, they had Tom King who did something on the Phoenix Lights, who's pretty good on this stuff. So I wasn't sure, looking at it, if it was some kind of weird reflection, because I didn't think of that myself. I saw it in the comments and whatever, and I'd heard it from somewhere else as well. And it might be a bit of a reflection, off lights, like, that might be coming, because there's a lot of off a searchlight or something. But what they said on that Fessler video, like you said, Ash, the light seemed to be bouncing off it, the searchlights, which implied it was actually there. And you're right, there's no thing there. So I wasn't sure. There were 6 different views of it as well. There was some hand, but like you said, Frank, I didn't realise that. Obviously, I'm not sure if it's the same thing. Again, people don't report it all the time, so it must have been pretty weird atmospheric conditions if it was a reflection. So I didn't know really, and I wasn't sure. If it was pretty impressive, but it didn't move. That was the other thing. So I'm on the fence with this. I don't know. And listening to what Ash said has put me more on the fence, really, because I'm more towards it being something. See what I mean? With the searchlights.
How about you, Greg? I don't think you've talked about this one yet, have you?
No. So I'm watching it as we got it on replay as we're speaking, and like Ash said, there's obviously something there because the spotlights are reflecting off of it at some point. But what are the spotlights doing? Are they look like they're going apart? They're like not searchlights as such. They're part of some kind of.
I believe it was from a casino, just lights, but it just seems to be focused on that object, which is a bit weird as well. Yeah. That's just coincidental. But just keep going back to the middle. It
sort of boomerangs a bit, doesn't it, on the video? But it definitely is something there. The spotlights are catching something, but because it's been filmed on a Nokia 3210 or something like that, it's very difficult to make any context. Like Ash said, you can see some buildings at the start and then they're sort of like panning up, but it's very difficult to get any kind of size out of it, any kind of real shape because it's so dark. But it's definitely something there. And I was looking on one of the comments on one of the videos, and one of the guys says, I'm the guy in the video filming, heard no noise, and it was higher up than the Skyland Tower, which is 489 feet. So whether he is that person or not, I don't know, but So he says it's at least 500 feet up, which would mean it's a fairly big thing. It looks like on the video, but I think it's pretty inconclusive as to what exactly it is. Another interesting video, but without context and. It's difficult.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think with all three of those videos, it sort of shows the importance of that bigger picture, doesn't it? It's like I've said this before on my podcast quite a bit. The Tic Tac Flare video alone, if you saw that video, you'd be like, so what? But when you add in the big picture and all of the surrounding events, all the various witnesses, the different, sensor systems that have picked this up, the quality of those sensor systems as well, it's a totally different story, and I think all of those ones that we talked about basically don't have that bigger picture. There may be little bits of it, but you don't get the full big picture that would make it truly compelling. I think there's also a bit of that thing where there's them natural lulls that happen in the UFO topic, when we're all waiting for something big to happen and, people start to wheel out these kind of relatively ordinary looking videos and there's a bit of hype, obviously, that goes along with that as well. And, at the end of the day, it's understandable because it's kind of, we all desire that new information to come out, don't we, sort of thing. But you do start to become aware of that pattern that sort of repeats. But I do find it interesting, like you were saying, Dave. Lou Elizondo hinted, I don't know if you guys caught this, but a little while ago in an interview, he hinted that there's one particular triangle video that is out in the public sphere that is actually a legit video of a triangle craft, and it's very, very clear. I think I was trying to find this earlier, but I couldn't find it. I think he said that it's during the day as well, and you can see clearly defined edges of the shape of the triangle. It's not just three distant lights. So he's suggesting that there's a video that they investigated during his time on the inside of a triangle, which is clearly a triangle shape, not just three lights, and it's somewhere out there. So that's what Dave was talking about. The hunt for the triangle. What do you reckon, Ash? Do you know which video it is?
I wish I did.
So anything that anyone wants to add about any of those three videos before we move on?
I just feel like Greg said, it's just seems to be getting quite a lot of videos recently, and it's obviously a good thing. It gets everyone talking. It gets people talking like us, just discussing it, what it could be, what it can't be, what we need, what's good about it, what's bad about it. So I think it's a good thing we get in the videos. It's just hopefully we need something a bit we just need that video with that extra bit to it, like the Tic Tac videos and stuff where you've got the different aspects to it rather than just a video, and that's all we've got.
It just shows, though, doesn't it, how we struggle without having that military equipment or whatever. Now, clearly, we wouldn't have the military equipment normally, but without having that backup or access to all those data sources, you're in such a weakened position, and they're holding all the cards, really. And that's why I suppose I've got even more time for Avi Loeb's stuff now, because at least he will have some equipment and gear, and people like UAPX as well who are out there trying to at least do something with it. I know I didn't particularly, although I haven't watched the documentary, but it doesn't seem to have gone down very well. But, and it just shows you that you need, that's why we always seem to sound like a broken record. That's why this disclosure push is so important, because I think from the sounds of it and from the sound of Lou's thing, they've got some pretty conclusive data with all the context we could wish for.
Yeah, it's a good point, and I forgot to mention this earlier when we were talking about the NASA thing. With the $100,000 budget and all the rest of it. Well, Avi Loeb has said for quite some time now that they had a couple of $1 million of funding for the Galileo project to get the first bits off the ground for that project, and he said in an interview recently that really what he wants is $100 million. And I mean, when you think about the level of expenditure going into what he's trying to do, I mean, obviously it's very ambitious that he's only got a couple of million at the moment, but that's still amazing. Even that is, a completely different league to $100,000, isn't it? Like if you're talking about already having a couple of million and aiming for $100 million, and he was saying that when you consider the potential rewards involved in looking into this topic scientifically, it's worth spending, that kind of money. And in fact, actually, that's not that much compared to things like the Large Hadron Collider. I don't know how many billion have been spent on that, but it's an unbelievable amount of money that goes into some of these scientific projects. And Avi Loeb, he's right up there. You know, he's in one of the top universities in the States, and he's pushing for £100 million UFO investigation group. Like, it's pretty amazing times, really, isn't it, when you think about it like that?
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, moving on from that, just are you guys all right for time? Because we kind of just gone over the hour mark, but there was just another thing I wanted to mention, if that's cool.
Yeah.
If anyone needs to go off and if it's bedtime, then feel free to jump off.
Absolutely, I'm fine. I've got as long as you need, Frank.
Cool. Yeah. Well, it's just I just thought we'll talk a little bit about the Jeremy Corbell Green Triangle video, and again, you know, we might not all be well up on this one, so it's just, you know, add thoughts and opinions as necessary. But these incidents were actually first reported on, as far as I know, by Dave Beattie, who I mentioned earlier. And then Jeremy Corbell actually got video footage of it, including the well-known green triangle footage, the one where, and there's also that one where the object enters the water, and there's one of a radar screen actually showing some of the objects being picked up on the radar as well, and things like that. And basically what it was, just for anybody who's listening who's not aware, it's multiple UAP were sighted July 14th, 2019 by crew members aboard the USS Kidd. And unidentified aerial vehicles were reported swarming around the ship and other ships in the area as well. I believe there were US Navy destroyers, USS Rafael Peralta, USS Russell, USS John Finn, and the USS Paul Hamilton. And these UAPs were described as flying for long periods in low visibility at night time and performing basically brazen maneuvers over the Navy warships, which is around about 100 miles off Los Angeles. And they sent out the Snoopy team, which I actually found out what this stands for, by the way, because I've always wondered. And it's the Ship Nautical or Otherwise Photographic Interpretation and Exploitation Team. So there you go. That's a cracker, that, isn't it?
They load the acronyms, don't they? Jeez.
Yeah, the Snoopy team. It sounds kind of partly comical, doesn't it? But it actually does mean all that those things that I just said. But that basically just refers to an onboard photographic intelligence team tasked with documenting unknown contacts. So they just go out with relatively simple cameras and stuff like that and look at these things. And one of the really interesting things about the ship logs from this incident, which has been obtained via FOIA requests and researchers, is on that USS Rafael Peralta. It describes a white light hovering over the ship's deck. And I thought that was particularly interesting because that's like, you know, it's not some distant light, that is it? It's something that's actually hovered right over the ship's deck. Anyway, so the whole thing lasted for over 90 minutes, and which is generally seen as longer than what a commercial drone can fly for. And also bear in mind that these ships are equipped with the Aegis radar, which is pretty much one of the best radar sensor systems in the world. Now, Scott Bray at the UFO hearings basically said, well, we're now aware of another case, a separate case, actually on the opposite coast of the States, where actual drones showed up and they looked pretty similar when viewed through the same equipment. So the original incident is probably just drones. But trouble is, in my opinion, that actually does miss out a lot of that bigger picture. And it seems like there's a bit of an effort by Bray to sort of like paint it as a nothing burger sort of thing. But actually, what about all the bigger picture involved? Because like we were talking about those UAP videos, that's just one person with a camera. But actually, this is the opposite of that because there's loads of other background, you know, witnesses. Like, I don't know how many people on those ships saw it, but it's definitely more than one. All of the various sensor systems, etc. So yeah, I just wondered what you guys think of that because it's been talked about quite a lot recently, and it's actually the videos have been around for a while, but because of that thing and the hearings, it's kind of been a bit reinvigorated. So yeah, who wants to go first on that then?
I'll give it a go if you want. Or did you? I mean, you've got to look at the context of this, really. I mean, starts with the Nimitz, then you've got other ones, and they're all going past the Catalina Islands down in the southwest of America, where there's rumoured, as luck would have it, or no, not luck would have it, was rumoured there's a big base, extraterrestrial, alien, other, whatever you want to call it, base But a lot of people have said that. Lou's mate, what's his name? Sean, second name, I can't remember. Famous fella.
Cahill.
Yes, that's it. I can't believe I forgot that. I'm definitely marked down on the UAP book club for that. But anyway,
yeah. It's late.
Yeah, yeah. But I remember I asked a question, fully enough, on that UFO podcast. I asked him directly if he thought there was a base there. And after he said, yes, there is virtually. But it's not just him, there's a few people have theorised that. So the thinking is that they're going past them because they've got nuclear weapons on them, it's attracting something, or even worse, they're deliberately attracting people. And some of the ships, this is a little bit conspiratorial, some of the ships are being sent out and they've got orders, the senior commanders, to actually do a bit of baiting or whatever to see what happens. But let's be honest, there's been these massive swarms all over the place, like you say, Frank, big accounts, going up over the deck, which they've not fired upon them, which is a question in itself, why apparently there's standing orders to shoot anything out of the sky that comes nearer than a few hundred yards or whatever. So they've not fired upon them. They've got flying for hours, not really like any normal drones. So, it's quite... Then Jeremy Corbyn, of course, had a load of witnesses. He had the triangle thing come out. That went worldwide on the news. He had lots of witnesses. He said he's got loads of statements. And so it looked a pretty big story. The Pentagon said they didn't know what it was, let's remember, at the time. And then we got the Chuckle brothers in the hearings, and then Mr. Bray stood up and said, oh, well, he's got this dodgy comparison he did, but proved nothing, in my opinion. Because Mick West had said he thought it was Booker, which he says everything is anyway. I know I don't want to be too unfair on Mick. You do need Micks around, I suppose, as long as they don't cherry pick the data. But basically, and he said, there's been studies into it. And I said to you, Frank, the other week, I bet the study he was quoting was Mick West's study. So I thought it was all pretty dodgy because he wasn't comparing apples with apples, really. So I personally think we need to look at this in a bit of a wider context, in that I think there's a bit of a walk back strategy going on. Ross Coulthart mentioned it in one of his things, in that at the hearings, they thought, we'll try and walk this back. We'll try and say it's nothing. It's just the sensor equipment. It's a bit of a misunderstanding. If it's just the equipment, we can't tell you about it because it's really nothing. Look at this picture. And then look at this dodgy triangle thing. We discredit that. Then we had a story coming out, I forget, in the war zone, about this ludicrous drone story that didn't stand up. Trying to say it was all drones from a particular ship. So to me, I think there's a lot of data that happened. It's part of a bigger picture, like you say, Frank. And I think it's part of this big walk back. They try to walk it back and throw drone shade, for want of a better word, on everything, on every UAP, and hope it sticks. But they've got no chance. They must think we're stupid if we're going to fall that. Just like Bray must have thought we're stupid in that area, that we were going to fall for all that guff that he come out with. So, which is a little bit not very objective of me, I suppose. But that's what I thought anyway. So I think there's too much evidence. I'm not buying it. I mean, it may well prove to be something and nothing, but I don't think that comparison was valid. And I think there's too much evidence of eyewitnesses that saw those things on the night. So there you go. I'm sitting on the fence there, aren't I?
No, fair comment. What about you, Greg? What do you reckon?
Well, I'm going to hark back to the early days of the UFOs when they were filmed on non-digital cameras, and they were filmed on old Sony camcorders, etc. That when you zoomed in on a light source, there was like an artifact that created so Ash, bit young for this, probably Frank as well. They created like a diamond shape. And there was lots of UFO videos going out at the time where people were zooming into a light source, like a star or something like that, and it would create a diamond on its side shape. And there was loads of videos out at the time. It was probably the late 80s when people started getting camcorders and whatnot. And when it zooms in on some of this footage, it looks like a similar type effect. But it's quite an interesting shape. It is triangular, which isn't diamond shaped like the lenses on the old cameras. But what struck me was it's got a consistent strobe light on it, which is that not what like military aircraft and normal aircraft have? So it drones also have those lights. I've had multiple drones, and they've all got a kind of light on there. You can switch those off, and I imagine the military would. But I don't know what to think about the video. It doesn't appear too out of the ordinary for me, to be fair. But I don't know.
Fair enough, mate. Fair enough. And Ash, what are we saying?
So this, like the swarm video, to be fair, I've not looked that much into, so not much I can add. But I know that Corbell, or I believe Corbell, said that he has more footage and more imagery regarding it. So why doesn't he release these if he's got more footage?
Why would he? Why would he? Why would you? If you're the thing is, it's all about the money. He's got this little money train going now after the Bob Lazar video. If he puts everything out that he's got now, he's got nothing in reserve to keep him ticking over.
Maybe because Corbell, like you say, is a bit like UAP is a little bit the same. I've not seen too much of Andy, to be honest. But what I have seen of him, like he'll appear on Twitter, and then I've got a video. It's going to be the most groundbreaking video you've ever seen. I'm going to release it in 3 weeks' time on a Friday. And Corbell's similar with this breakthrough video. It's going to be the best video I've ever seen. But it's on Instagram 5 minutes before I'm going to release it on Twitter. It's like, just release the video. It's all about me, with the give me attention type thing. So on that point, like I say, the video can't really add too much to it apart from just, if you got more footage that could sway it one way or the other, just release that footage if you've got it.
Yeah, a couple of things I think I want to add to that. I mean, first of all, I have to admit, when I first saw this video, I thought it was one of the least interesting out of a lot of the videos, the Navy videos and all the rest of it. To be honest, I think I've kind of got more interested in that as I've gone along, really. The thing for me about the the thing that you were mentioning, Greg, about zooming in on an object and it looks like that, kind of like the shape of the aperture, basically, of whatever camera. So I believe different cameras, sometimes it's a circular thing, and obviously there are definitely some people, not going to name any names, but there's people on Twitter that zoom in on specks of dust and claim that it's craft and all the rest of it, and they appear to be like orbs and all. There's definitely that goes on. But my thing with this is that, Scott Bray was basically saying that it was the aperture, the green, because it's night vision, and basically they zoomed in on a drone at night and it was a triangle because of the aperture and the green night vision and stuff like that. Fair enough. But that's not to say that if there was a genuine anomalous object in the sky, you zoom in on that, it's going to look like a green triangle, isn't it, sort of thing. So it's a bit of a Bray's explanation as to what it actually is doesn't really add up, does it? Because it's like you could be zooming in on a legit flying saucer, glowing, hovering over the ship, and it's going to look like a flipping green triangle, isn't it, at the end of the day? So it's a weird one.
If you didn't, sorry, Frank, carry on, mate.
Yeah, no, you go ahead, Dave.
No, were you going to say something else, though? Because I interrupted you mid-flow there.
No, go ahead. It's all good. I forgot what I was going to say now. Anyway,
well, you remember in a minute. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. I thought you.
Don't worry.
If you remember in the hearings, there's one of the congressmen said, "Well, have you tried recreating it with the scope that they use?" He went, "No, we have not." And they haven't done any of that. And they haven't done any basic stuff. And there's been a lot of debate about whether it will produce that at all. I know you're right about that, Greg, because I've seen that. That's right. But I think on these scopes, I'm not sure if that happens at all. The lighting, there's been a low, but there's been a lot. That's just from me reading. I have no special knowledge of it at all. But the lighting, there's been a lot of debate about that. But it's not normal lighting for any of these things. But we don't know about that. But I think that is a strong point. I agree with that. Thing was, I think they were 30 to 60 miles out to sea in the middle of the ocean. That's some drone that gets out there, unless there was some dodgy Chinese junk at the back throwing out what's it's unseen by the might of the Navy. That's because that was what that was almost trying to imply as well on that article, which was roundly laughed at by everybody. So, yeah. I mean, But the thing is, that Bray video, I mean, it wasn't great. I mean, I wonder why it wasn't shot out of the sky. But it wasn't the same video as what Corbell was showing. And I thought Corbell's had more merit because it had a lot of eyewitness and a lot of other. And I get your point. He is a bit of a showman, isn't he? I get that, Ash, and it irritates a lot of people. That, and then he comes on sort of like some sort of crazed sort of rapper who's says, show me, and goes on with himself. But just breaking news though. Partly old Sharpie, who in his Patreon thing said he had an article coming out soon about this very matter, about the night. So I don't know what that's about, but we know Chris. So I think because I happen to be a patron, because he's got compromising photographs of me somewhere, and forces me to pay every month. But I saw that and I thought, well, that's interesting. And I thought about that video. I mean, I don't know if there's anything to do with Corbell that he didn't say in the patron thing, but nonetheless, it does refer to that. So there might be a bit more news coming out generally about that. But I do think what I was really getting at, I suppose, is I just wonder if it seems there's a lot of these stories coming up around drones and other weird things that are trying to say, it's just a drone. And so we all forget about all the mountains of evidence and go, yeah, it's a drone. And then we all walk off. It's not going to happen, is it? It's not that. But I do accept there is some issues, there. So I don't want to be too dismissive. I'm just a bit dismissive of the wider effort, really.
Yeah, I think one thing that struck me about it are the hearings as well. I know I've banged on about this enough already about the hearings and whatnot, but it reminded me of that thing that you were saying earlier, Rash, about that NASA statement of they slipped that line in of like, we don't have any evidence to say that it's extraterrestrial. And the selection of those videos and the fact that they chose to specifically debunk that triangle video and all the rest of it, it is kind of a little bit of a what's behind that kind of thing. Like, and I think what should have happened at that hearing is Bray should have been asked, all right, fine, you say that you've seen some other objects which were definitely drones and they appeared like green triangles as well. Fine. But what does the radar data show? Because we know that these things have actually been picked up off of these formation of multiple ships with some of the best radar in the world. So it wouldn't have been that difficult to say, the radar data definitively proves that it's definitely nothing anomalous and it's a drone, And has that been considered as part of the investigation? And does it show anomalous movements, or is it just purely drone-like? And if it is drones, where were they launched from? Who's flying drones that can operate for over 90 minutes at night, hundreds of miles off the coast? And even if it is a drone, bearing in mind, that's still pretty bloody concerning, isn't it, at the end of the day? So don't worry, everybody. It's just our enemies operating devices with impunity directly over some of our best ships. Like, it's not a great look, is it? So Not only that, they came back the second night as well and did it again, and they were powerless to stop that one as well. So it's pretty baffling to me. Even if it's drones, it's really bad. And if it's not drones, then, well, that's not exactly great either, is it? But it's interesting and worth looking into more. And it sort of suggests, as I say, that there's a bit of a debunking agenda behind the scenes at the AOI MSG. If that's the way they're going to kick things off, the way that they put it across to that hearing, they're going to carry on looking at other cases like that in the same way and not really give a full bigger picture of an analysis that they've done when they present the findings to the public. Not very impressed with that as a start. I'd like to see a more thorough investigation with witnesses being brought in, people who are on them ships, data examined from all the sensor systems and whatnot, any corroborating satellite data or any other sensor platforms. There might have been submarines in the area, for example, like Corbell's, alleging that they were transmedium, they went under the water and things like that. There must be other things that they can look into and then put forward a proper thorough report. But, what we saw was basically just, there's some other objects that look kind of similar, so I guess it's cool, everyone go home. It's not exactly the reassurance you want from somebody of that level being brought before Congress, is it? You know what I mean?
I'd imagine it's going to be, that'll be for the classified hearing.
Yeah,
well, that's talk about it behind the closed door, and we'll never actually release the actual why we can say it is this or whatever.
Yeah, that's the frustrating thing. I wonder if there's a bit of a balance to be struck there, because obviously if all of the really definitive data that you can properly decide one way or another is going to be classified, we're not going to get very far, are we, at the end of the day? But I suppose that's where things like the Galileo project come in, because everything's going to be open to the public, completely transparent, So that's kind of what I always end up going back to with these things. You get frustrated at the lack of progress in this area or that area. Let's just go back to Avi Loeb and the Galileo project. That's kind of something I'm particularly excited about. So, yeah, anyone want to add anything else about the green triangles?
No, I think that's it.
No, all good.
Well, I think it's probably best to call it a night there, really. We're coming up to an hour and a half, so that's been a bit of a bumper session, that there. So thanks very much, everybody. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, nice one.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Cheers, everybody. I really enjoyed that. Cheers.
Spot on.
Cool.
Until next time.
Yeah, see you next time.
UFO Roundtable. The UFO Thinker and Pursuit of the Paranormal Podcasts.